So welcome to today's episode of What to Say and How to Say It, the podcast to help you fix your marriage. I'm Shai Lewis, and I'm here with Nina Rosner. Our mission is to help you, Christian married man or woman, navigate conflict and build connection so you can have a thriving marriage. So today our topic is what to say when help becomes transactional. So I don't know, Nina, about you, if you've ever heard someone say, after all that I have done for you, blank, blank, blank. Yeah, have you?
Yeah, of course. I think that's something everybody could relate to.
Yeah. So I know I have, and I know I've also used that phrase. And I think the goal today is to get behind what's underneath that. Like, let's talk about why that happens in relationships and what's attached to those words. Because when we give, whether it's our time, our resources, our gifts, talents, the goal is usually to meet a need, to truly help. There's pure intent there. But then sometimes on the back end of that, we learn there was an expectation that came with that help. And so that's a little bit more like manipulation than help, if I could be honest. So today what we want our listeners to walk away with is the what to say in that situation when that help feels more like a purchase instead of a gift. So if you don't do this well, you can end up creating chaos, more chaos, and then end up not getting that help and having to search elsewhere for it. So before we get into this, Nina, I wanted to get your thoughts around when help becomes transactional. Is that something that we can tell immediately, in your opinion, or is that something that usually has a cover on top of it?
Well, yeah, so it's both, right? And when we're the person that is holding this expectation over somebody else, we don't even know what's happening until they do something that we feel we're entitled to differently. And then we feel like we get the resentment going because we have an expectation. I do all this stuff for you. You could at least do this thing for me. Like, really? And that's the essence of it is that we're not giving to give, we're giving to get. And it feels horrible to be on the receiving end of that too. And yet at the same time, relationships are built on mutuality, the reciprocity of giving. Right. And so in the best circumstance, you have both people just giving to give, man. Like they're serving the Lord and they're loving. There's no expectation. And that is what's really beautiful is when that happens. You get both people trying to outserve each other. And that's what leadership in a beautiful family looks like, because that's just lovely, right? As long as people have boundaries. But, because otherwise, as I said that, I went, yeah, that could look like enmeshment too. Codependency, yeah, but that comes with expectation, also. So if you're giving without the expectations, that's a really beautiful spot to be in. The problem is that when the other person isn't reciprocal, or they just want to take in the relationship. And that is it's unfortunate, but it's a really common thing. I'm kind of mad right now at the people that created this TV show called Jamestown. I watched part of the first episode last night. I'm thinking, I'm a history buff a bit about American history, a little bit. And I was like kind of excited. So I start watching this thing. And they totally get the storyline wrong about these women that came over for the Virginia Tobacco Company, brought them over. They actually paid these women to come, but they made it seem like the men that were waiting, the colony was going to die out if they didn't get some wives. So they made it, made this deal, and the women showed up, and the story, the producers made it completely wrong. They made these men into having to pay to get these wives, which was not true at all. Historically, that was incorrect. But one of the things that happened was one of the main characters took physical intimacy, raped his wife, basically. But before they even got married, like, no joke. And treated her like property, which, was just devastating. I think that's the extreme of, I'm doing this for you. And his whole attitude was, I'm paying for you to be here. I bought you, and that is, I can't think of anything more evil than that. And we turned it off shortly after that, because, oh, wow, I don't need to see that.
Yeah.
We looked it up because it was like, did that really happen?
Right. Yeah.
And no, it did not. And so I'm like, okay, should have read the reviews first. We seldom make that mistake, but we did last night. My point is that, relationships can be that bad. I've worked with women where their husband is, no, I'm the husband, I'm the head of this house. And he doles out a little allowance for her. She can put gas in her car, maybe, but he keeps tight rein on that. This stuff is real. It's out there, and it exists to that level. And I think I don't think that's most of our audience. I think that's like a fraction of the people out there. But women are like this too, women use sex as a weapon. Well, I'll give you this if you buy me that, or if you do this, or, well, you didn't do this, so I'm not going to do that. And it's very vengeful. And that is very different than having healthy boundaries and structuring an atmosphere that is conducive to a good relationship. That's a whole different deal. But in a space where, like you're saying, there's this if you, I will attitude, it's all about purchase and exchange. And that is not relational. That is linear, that's left brain, that's systematic. There's no relationship there. And that is not who God is. He is relational. He sent his son to die for us so that we could be in right relationship with him right now, this minute. That's what this is about. We get it wrong.
Yeah. And, it just takes away the spirit, in my opinion, of, love, which is what we're called to do when we're truly loving a person, and wanting their highest good, like, God tells us to do. There really is no expectation attached to it. There shouldn't be, at least. And I don't know what happens. I guess, it's the flesh, it's the sin nature, where we just start to expect things back. And sometimes it's not even like what you just described, where it's in your face and verbalized. Sometimes it's unspoken. And if you don't meet what they want, then is when you really see that there was that expectation attached. And so I just find it fascinating, because you don't expect that from those that you love, or those that say they love you. But boy, does that happen. Not just in marriage, but, parent to child. It can happen amongst siblings. It can, show up in any relationship, really. And boy, it's ugly.
Oh, yeah. And, there's a lot of parents that have this expectation relationship with their kids. And it's stunning to me that even exists. But it is very real for a lot of people. Like I had zero expectations in terms of my children giving to me from a need standpoint, relationally. Like I didn't get my relationship needs met with my kids. Were they fun? Did they fill me with joy? Absolutely. But I recognize my role in that. I'm a parent. This is my child. And was it hard for me to ground them sometimes? Like, yeah, I hated that. Like discipline isn't fun. And, we usually work things out consequentially differently most of the time, but there's certain things where there's outcomes, right? Like if you're rude, you don't get the next thing that you asked for. That, you can get what you want when you're respectful. And so saying no, like I want to give my kid those things, but they I'm in a role of a parent, you need to be able to coach. And the only way they learn is through action. And so most of the time, a discussion doesn't do the trick. You have to like have some sort of consequence with that so that they get the point. And I wonder what God thinks about all that stuff. Cause, I want to give to my kids. When, it made me sad sometimes when they were grounded and couldn't do a thing. Cause I was like, oh man, yeah, it was easy for me to validate. I want to go to the concert. Yeah. I was really looking forward to that for you too. Absolutely. That would have been so much fun. Bummer, and it was but when you have this thing where it's personal, like I had a situation with one of my daughter's friends. She comes over after school, and these kids are like 9 years old or something like that. They're little, well, ish, right? Fourth grade, something like that, third grade. Anyway, and the little girl is crying, and I said, so what's going on? And she's in between sobs. I didn't buy my mom a birthday card. And I'm like, oh honey, oh, that's really hard, isn't it? Well, do you want to make her one? She's like, she's so mad at me, she won't even talk to me. And she played out this conversation where her mother and the parents were separated. So here's this kid who has like doesn't know what day it is of the week practically, doesn't know the date, misses her mom's birthday, and her mom just lets her have it. And the words that were said were, she does so much for me. She told me she does all these things for me, and I can't even remember her birthday. I'm a terrible daughter. She picked all that up and put it on her. Well, yeah, I meddled. I said, no, that's not true. Your mommy was really hurting because she and your dad aren't together right now. That's what this is about. This is not your fault. No 9-year-old on the planet is supposed to know the date. It's really okay. And your mommy shouldn't have put that on you. She's hurting and she made that your problem, and it's not. What do you want to do? You want to make a card, So, but it's this, I do all these things for you. And then I think in that mindset, every expectation is like, wow, not servant oriented, right? Because it's different. It's really okay to say to somebody, hey, I love you and I want us to have a good relationship. And it's not like you to kind of lose your ever loving mind at the kids at dinner, like you just did. Can we talk about that? Like, what's going on? And call them to a higher level of being versus, I work my tail off all day long and I provide a dinner for you people. And then you show up and you destroy it. I work so hard and you come in here and you don't do your part too. Like, okay, let's personalize that. No, no, like, and that's at the core of all this. We're making it about us, and it's not.
Right. That's exactly right. And it's really a tough place to be in when that's kind of put in front of you, because it's almost like you haven't been given the benefit of the doubt at all. And even really the opportunity to do the right thing, because, you've got the weight of this expectation attached. And so it's tough. I can't imagine a 9-year-old having to carry that, but anyone really, it's hard. So I guess the question I have is, okay, is there a way to respond to that? Because I think you gave a great example of a better way to show concern if that you're not getting the reciprocity or the mutual respect component. But what if before that even happens, you're being attacked the way the 9-year-old is attacked? What would be an appropriate response? What to say?
So I'm going to say this is appropriate, and I'm going to also couch it with, this is really hard to do because you're probably going to be triggered. And so the thing that's in the way of being able to do this level of communication is our own wounding. So assuming you've gone through all the healing processes you possibly can, which we do a lot of with people, the appropriate response would be to validate whatever's coming out of their mouth, meaning, and you're not validating the opinion, you're validating the person. you feel like you've really given a lot in this relationship. You feel like you do a ton and the weight of all of this is on you. And you feel like this isn't fair right now. And this is really upsetting you. That's what I'm hearing from you right now. Is that correct? You validate it. That's the appropriate thing to do. And they go, yeah. And then they levy some more stuff out. That's what they do. They dish out whatever is left, but their energy is lowered because they've just been heard. And so you validate that. And then you ask questions around it. Somebody's puking up emotion all over you, all over the floor in front of you. The correct response is, let's poke around and see what's in that. Let's look at the ugly together. And yeah, boy, not always easy to do if we're hurt. But that comes into the whole identity piece, right? Because if I have a healthy identity, I'm not serving you to get something from you. I'm serving you because that's who I am. I'm respectful and loving towards you because that's who I am. That's who God is in me, then he's coming out. That's the identity piece, right? So if somebody loses their ever loving mind, they've just, me too, like we all forget who we are.
Yep.
And that's what's happened to that person when they're in that space. And so it's our job to help them remember who they are. And we don't do it by arguing. We don't do it by, shaming them. Right. We do it by validating, poking around in that, letting them, get their wiggles out, whatever, not owning any of it because none of that is about us. There might be a sliver of truth in there, but if we're solid in our identity, none of that hurts. That's being bulletproof. And that's the end result of the identity work that we do. Worth doing. If you cannot validate somebody, you're triggered. If you have triggerings, you don't know who you are and you're losing your identity in that moment. And so when people do that with us, we just need to help them find their way back. They're lost. They've forgotten who they are.
Yeah, that is essentially it. And you're right. It is hard to do in the moment if you're hurt, if you're triggered. But the good news is if you don't get it right the first time, you can try again.
Yeah. You'll know if you don't get it right because they'll be even more mad. Yes. Yeah, the energy will not decrease. It will increase. It's really easy to tell if you've done that well.
That's right. That's right. And that is the goal, is for us to have a strong identity in Christ, where nothing can get to us and we can show up as the best version of ourselves in our relationships. So, okay, one question before we wrap up. When does it become necessary for a boundary in this situation? Like, what if, there is like that escalation that we just mentioned, and it just keeps getting worse and worse, and nobody's listening anymore, and nobody wants to help anymore. Is there a need for a boundary in that situation to help turn things around?
Yeah.
What would that look like?
Yeah. So first of all, and I've dealt with a couple of clients where this has been the thing. And I'm not going to say this is men or women. Okay. This applies to both genders. So the situation is, both people have triggering. One of them's getting help. One of them's discovering her identity in Christ. So then what happens is she has more fruit of the Spirit. She's more patient, kinder, more gentle, all these things. She can handle all these things. And it's no effort. The yoke's easy because love's there. And you got to do that for a little while. And then you realize that this person that you're dealing with has lots of woundings and they're operating out of them. And sometimes it looks like they're suspicious and paranoid and accusing the other person of all sorts of stuff that they're not even doing. Fits of rage over simple questions like, whoa, what set them off? So and there's this awareness, like before it was both people, lots of hot everything. And you couldn't really tell where it started and who made it bad because both of them were messed up. And so one person figures out their identity. There's this awareness moment where it's like, oh, they're wounded. They're okay. And so then there's, these opportunities to, validate, ask what's going on, that kind of thing. And if things don't change, if that isn't helpful enough, if there's abusive behavior in the relationship, name calling or, blame and really toxic communication, and that does not get better, then there needs to be some excavation in terms of leaving the conversation. Like, we're going to be done here. And then there needs to be a, I love you in a calm moment. I love you. And I want to have a good relationship with you. We've had a number of things happen over the last couple of weeks where it's been you blowing up and losing your mind. And I'm just going to tell you, in love, that has to stop. We don't act like that in our family. And so here's a phone number for the insurance company. I want you to call them with the EAP or whatever it is, because every health insurance plan in America is required by law to offer mental health services. There's that. So here it is. And I want you to get with a therapist and work through what's underneath all this for you, because I'm no longer part of this problem. I want to see you be healed, and let's work on that. And if the person gets defensive or whatever, it's like, no, here's the deal. Our relationship is broken until you do this. And I want to have a good relationship with you, but you're in a space where you keep breaking it. I've stopped breaking it. I'm responsible for my contribution. I'm sorry. I've screwed this up too, man. But I'm done with that. I've repented. I've gone a different direction. I want you to do that too. I want to have connection with you. And I can see things differently now. And I think that is what help looks like. And it doesn't matter whether you're the husband or the wife in that situation. Women are called to help, and I do see more men struggling with anger in more violent ways than women do, but women struggle with anger too. And it comes out, it just doesn't get reported. Like, we can be just as ugly. We're not as damaging physically because we're smaller. Like, yeah. So taking a step in the direction of, even a separation, if somebody won't go get help, that is useful, as long as it's done in love, as long as the motivation behind it is, I really want us to be together. I really want us to connect. But if you don't have some boundaries in that space, if people just keep getting whatever they want, whenever they want it, you're condoning bad behavior and treating it as, yeah, keep doing that. Yep. You bet. Sure. This is how we do things. No, it's not. Look at the Bible. It is not biblical for us to be harsh with each other. And if I don't do something with that, and do I forgive? Absolutely. But forgiveness and trust are two different things. Forgiveness and depth of relationship, we damage the relationship when we injure it. And those repairs have to occur for there to be any trust there. And when they don't, boy, you're in a relationship in name only at some point, if nothing happens.
Absolutely. And I just thought of one quick thing while you were talking about help. Sometimes we want to offer help for our own benefit, and it's not necessarily for the person's benefit. How can we make sure that we check ourselves to make sure our motives are pure? Because it can look the same on the outside, but in our hearts, it's really about us.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's a fair question. And I think if we're asking the question, we already know the answer, right? Either way. But we should be asking God that, because he will, you've got to check your motives, and Lord, search my heart. Show me the sin in me. He'll be like, yeah, I've been waiting for you to ask. Here you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or he'll show you your pure motives. That's an easy one, but we got to ask him.
Yeah. All right. Good stuff today. All right. So what will you do with the information you have? We invite you to check out our website, greaterimpact.org. We have a free PDF called 5 Tools for How to Stop Walking on Eggshells. And if you're really interested in taking your relationships to the next level, we have a couple of e-courses for you. One is for Christian women that are married. Another is for Christian couples. So check us out in your free time. And also we have other episodes right here on this channel for you to view at your leisure. And if you really like it, why don't you just click that like button and subscribe so you'll be the first to know when our next episode airs. We thank you for joining, and we can't wait to see you next time.